Hello everyone and welcome. This video is sponsored by Just Kidding, Don't Skip, Still Poor, One of the People. If you are relatively new to Valorant or you have been playing Valorant for quite a while, but you can get quite the grip of the game and you are playing just instinctively, then this might actually be the right place for you. I won't be going through everything in details, maybe I will do that in the future videos, but for today I will be talking about some of the main things you need to be aware of. If I have forgotten anything, then I will add it to future videos. If you guys like the content, then subscribe and like, and maybe share the video with your friends. You know, that friend who suck and want to know what they should do to be better at Valorant. Yeah, I also stream on Twitch almost every day, starting 10 p.m. GMT +1. If there is no YouTube video uploaded, then you guys will most likely find me on Twitch. All right, let's get started. Before we start talking about gameplay mechanics, we need to change some settings first. The first thing to do is find a good crosshair for yourself. Crosshair settings sometimes are personal preferences, but generally speaking, a crosshair should follow certain rules if you want to reach maximum efficiency. First of all, a crosshair should be small so that it doesn't really cover more area of the screen. If that is the case, then you will have a hard time winning long-range fights if you don't ADS, aim down sights. Second of all, a crosshair should have a distinct color with contrast to all the other colors in environment. We don't want the crosshair to blend in with everything else. We actually want the opposite of that. I personally went with yellow. I feel like it's working for me. You can go with cyan if you want. Lastly, a crosshair shouldn't be distracting. The main purpose of the crosshair is to tell you where the first bullet will go if you are 100% accurate. This is why fire error and movement error shouldn't be enabled. I think these last two they are great. They're both great for someone who is new. It will make you more comfortable with Valorant's movement, but at some points in time you have to remove them. So it's just a stable small crosshair in the middle of the screen that just tells you where that bullet will go. The second thing we need to think about while we are still in the settings is the sensitivity. Choosing a sense can be challenging to a lot of players, and there are many tips and tricks to tell you what is the right sense for you. So I won't be telling you what sense you should do, but rather some info around it. Now, if we are talking objectively, then having high sense or low sense both have advantages and disadvantages. For example, having high sensitivity lowers the time it takes for your crosshair to travel the distance of where it first was and where the enemy is. But the disadvantage of it is that it is inaccurate, especially from long distances. So for this reason only, a lot of people have high sense in game and they train for days to get familiar with high sense and for their muscle memory to catch on, which is actually the next thing I wanted to talk about. Changing sensitivity most of the time won't make you magically better. It will take time for you to get familiar to that sense, especially if you have been playing with a different sense for a long period of time. This is what muscle memory is useful for. With time and training, you don't have to consciously aim, but rather instinctively to save you the time. Okay, so now that we are done with the settings, we need to first learn about the range of our weapons. This is important because we need to be well aware of the range of our weapons before we can do any mechanics on them. For example, an AWP or Marshal or Guardian have high range. A Vandal and Phantom and Bulldog have lower range, and then lower than them are Ares, Odin, etc. So yeah, you can basically think of range as how accurate a gun is and how much damage it deals over long distances. So following this topic, the AWP has the longest range and Shorty has the shortest range. The next thing we need to learn is crosshair placement. Crosshair placement is having your crosshair already at where the enemy could be, so that when someone peeks, you don't really have to aim a big distance to reach them. Your crosshair is already on them or very close to them. So yeah, now that we know that, having your crosshair at where the enemy could be is good, but you know, we can go a step further. So yeah, having your crosshair placement always at headshot level is better. This is so that when an enemy appears, we are going for the quickest kill we can make without giving them time to fight back. Of course, having perfect crosshair placement is a skill that takes a long time to hone and master, so you have to be very familiar of how tall agents are and have a good estimation, or rather accurate imagination. You can practice this at any map you want. Just hop in a custom game, pick Sage, turn on Ghost mode, fly up and kill yourself. And make sure your auto respawn is on, and then position yourself where you want to when you want the dummy to be, and then res yourself. And there you have a Sage you can train with if you have no friends like me. If you have friends though, they can be Sage themselves, do the same thing, and you will be able to shoot them and kill them. You can do this with a friend of yours, and they can spawn a Sage in every corner and train your crosshair placements. What I am demonstrating here is that if your crosshair placement is good, you can pre-shoot walls and smokes and get kills without even seeing the enemy, because you already know where the head should be. The next thing we need to talk about is checking every corner, and I see a lot of low elo players die because of this countless times. When you are pushing an area without or with very little information, then push while checking for every corner, literally every corner that the enemy could possibly be holding. And of course, do this while also mixing it with having a very good crosshair placement. Well, you might say, "Oh, Mr. Allah, sometimes I can push without revealing myself to multiple angles that the enemy could be holding at the same time." That's how you sound, by the way, because you're all alpha, sigma males and females. Well, my dear viewer, that's why we have abilities such as smokes, blinds, and walls. All those smokes are the best ability in this category. Another thing that you should keep in mind is that aim is 3D. As soon as you understand this concept really well and you start applying it, you will notice that your aim is a lot fucking better. What I mean by aim is 3D is that when we aim, our brain just tells us that the enemy is on the left, for example, and we just move the mouse to the left as accurate as we can, and we try to shoot them. We don't really take into consideration how far the enemy is until we start fighting with them. If we consider our crosshair as a point, don't think about it as a point that moves across 2 dimensions, but rather 3 dimensions, adding depth to that. This is just a fancy way of saying you should be controlling the speed of how you aim, depending on how far the enemy is. I mean, of course, if an enemy is far, you just start aiming towards him, considering the fact that he is far. But once you start thinking about aim being 3-dimensional, you start literally envisioning the crosshair not just in the middle of your screen, but it literally touches every surface you aim on. Basically, what this all means is that the range of your hand motion is a lot wider when an enemy is closer to you than it is if the enemy is far. That's basically what it means. We need to also learn about spraying. I wouldn't say that spraying and praying isn't a thing in Valorant. It surely is, but you can use that to your advantage, depending on the situation, of course. Well, the only situation where you can spray is if the enemy is in close range and sometimes mid-range. If the enemy is far, don't spray, but rather burst 2 or 3 shots, let the recoil reset, then burst 3 or 2 shots again. If the enemy is in close range, spraying is good because most of those bullets will actually land on the enemy. Of course, you prefer to have a one-tap headshot, but just in case, yeah, you can spray. Okay, now let's talk about crouching. Well, crouching should only be used when you are spraying, so it is good in close to mid combat. If you're gonna spray, then crouch after your third shot, and you will automatically compensate for the recoil that you get. It is more accurate than compensating it by just aiming down. Well, the problem with this technique is that it doesn't really work that well in low elo because enemies don't really aim at headshot level, to start with, so they aim at the body, and most of the time if you keep crouching you will get one tapped, not because they aimed at your head, but rather you moved your head to their crosshair. So yeah, there is a gameplay mechanic that we haven't talked about yet, and that is counter strafing. So as we all know so far, recoil comes with spraying or moving while shooting. Of course, it depends on how fast you move and which gun are you using. You can run and gun with the Spectre in close to mid-range, and you would have a higher chance to kill someone like that than you would with a Vandal or Phantom, because Spectre is just built different. Despite all of this, if I am moving in one direction and all of a sudden I move in the complete opposite direction, there is a small moment when I am completely standing still. At that point in time, my accuracy is 100%. So basically, counter strafing is when you move in the opposite direction of your initial movement to get a chance of having 100% accuracy to shoot someone while still moving. It sounds crazy and cool, I know, but it is a skill that takes a long time to learn and longer to master. So yeah, it is hard because that brief moment you get of 100% accuracy is so small that you can barely fit 2 shots in there. So you have to be quick and you have to be accurate. I don't want to flex, but if you manage to mix it up with some basic trigger discipline, which is this burst fire, this points that I talked about, and good crosshair placement, you can do something like this. Oh my god. God damn it, Sasa. Okay, the next thing you need to know, and this is one of the most important things you need to know and to understand, are angles. This is a good example that I am demonstrating here. This dummy sage could only see the door. This door, however, I can see her without even entering her line of sight. This is because the dummy sage is closer to that wall than I am. So when you are peeking an angle or holding an angle, make sure that you are as far as possible from the wall as you can, because if an enemy peeks, then the one who is farther away from the wall will see the other one before they can see him. In case you guys didn't know, when you are running, there is a circle around you in the map. It shows in the map, and it symbolizes the range of the noise you make, the range of the noise your footsteps make. So of course you can run when there is no enemy nearby, but when you are approaching the site and you have no info about it, then it is good to shift so that you don't give free information to the enemy team. Oh, and also the range of the spike explosion is exactly the same range of your noise when you are running, so you can use this info to do this cool thing. I always do it every time. Just make sure you don't fuck it up and die in a competitive game and lose your weapons and shit. Okay, so to sum up the game mechanics that you need to master so that you keep remembering them. Number 1, weapon range. Number 2, crosshair placement. Number 3, corner checking. Number 4, aim 3D. Number 5, spraying. Number 6, crouching. Number 7, counter strafing. Number 8, angles. And number 9, footsteps noise. So yeah, if I've forgotten anything, I will put it in future videos. If you guys enjoyed the content, then please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps with the channel. And maybe share it with your friend who wants to be a better Valorant player. Also, follow me on Twitch. I stream almost every day starting from 10 p.m. GMT plus 1. I do a lot of dumb shit, cool shits. I play mostly Minecraft, League, and Valorant for now. So yeah, I might play some other games in the future. So yeah, until then, we will see. Alright guys, I'll see you in another time. Assalamu alaikum.